In the last video, we looked briefly at how you can mute and unmute and solo sound classes. Being able to solo and mute sound waves, sound cues, and sound classes is incredibly useful when working in your project in order to check the mix and to troubleshoot. But you'll probably find that you regularly want to audition particular combinations of sounds, and this is where you really need to start thinking about a sound class hierarchy for your project. If we look at the Mushroom Detective sound class mix we built for the last video, you can see that we maintained the Mushroom sound class at 1 because that was the focus of attention for the player, and we brought down the area loops, the area one-shots, and the footsteps. Now, looking at our Epic audio hierarchy here, you can see that the area loops and the area one-shots are actually children of this sound class called ambience. So actually all we needed to do here was to select the ambient sound class and then make sure that this box was checked here saying apply to children. So that means that this volume adjuster of 0.2 will apply both to the ambient sound class and to any of its children. So you don't need to specifically refer to every single sound class in the project in your sound class mix. Similarly, we can get rid of that. Similarly, the footsteps are actually children of the character, player character. So we could choose the uppermost part of that hierarchy, which is character here, and again select apply to children. So this has simplified our sound class mix, and also you can see how this will allow us to speed things up when constructing sound class mixes in the future. The final effect within the game will be exactly the same as it was before. So I'll press number pad key 5. So that's brought down the ambient sound class and all of its children. So that includes the area loops and the area one-shots. It's also brought down the character sound class and its children, which includes the footsteps. The only sound class in this area that remains unaffected is the mushrooms. You can create your sound class hierarchy in a couple of ways. Firstly, you can drag out from an existing sound class to create a new one. For example, test 01. And you can see that appears then in the content browser. If you've already created a sound class in the content browser, for example, test 02, we can also drag and drop that into our hierarchy and connect it up as we wish. Let's have a look at how sound class hierarchies can help us to audition different elements of our audio mix. So we'll go over to the lakeside area, and here I just want to focus on the footsteps just to make sure that all these materials are assigned to the right type. Now, you might assume that you can regain mouse control, come over here and choose the character sound class and solo it, and then you'd hear the footsteps that are within that sound class. But soloing a sound class allows you only to hear sounds that are directly assigned to that class, not its children. So if we solo the character sound class, we're only going to hear things that are directly assigned to that class, whereas the footsteps is actually a child of the player character, which in turn is a child of the character. So instead we need to set up a sound class mix. So we've done that here. We've got character only sound class mix, which brings down ambience and its children, interactions, its children, dialogue, music, etc., and maintains the character at 1. So now we've got that sound mix, we can instigate it in the game with the console command set base sound mix and naming the mix that we want, which is called character underscore only. So now we've got the character isolated and its children, so we can hear those footsteps we wanted to focus on. So setting up a number of sound mixes to isolate different groups is really useful, and by creating an audio hierarchy and selecting the parents and apply to children, that speeds things up a lot. But if you really want to speed up your workflow, then we'd suggest that you consider some keyboard shortcuts. So here you can see in the project, we've got number pad keys 0 to 4 selecting different sound mixes. So let's just go to this area of the village over here, and we can hear those in action. So I'm going to press the number pad key 1, which is going to isolate our area loops. 2 isolates source loops. 3 one-shots. 4 the character sounds. And 0 is reset. And don't forget that you can get mouse control here and audition the mix of these different groups in real time. So I'm going to open the area loops and just change the volume. So we can play around with different sound mixes. Before we push on each sound mix modifier, we've just got this little blueprint node that says clear sound mix modifiers, because you can have multiple mix modifiers on at once, something we'll be talking a bit more about in a future video, and this just makes sure that everything's reset before we push on our new one. So far we've looked at how sound class mixes can be pushed on or popped off using blueprints, and how devising a hierarchy of sound classes for your project can really give an extra layer of control. We're going to conclude with a brief example of the EQ functions that you have within a sound class mix, and how hierarchies can sometimes catch you out. So over in this area of the village, you've got some pigs, and as a player, you have the ability to come over and attempt to steal one. So here's the pig botherer blueprint here. So it's quite simple. We enter the overlapping sphere, we press E to try and steal a pig, and we're not able to. The pig's going to kick us, and it's going to make a sound. And when it makes that sound, it's going to push on this mix modifier called tinnitus here. And as we can see here, this is making use of the EQ section of the sound mix. So we're applying EQ. EQs, unlike the sound class volumes and pitches, they don't act as multipliers, and so whichever one has the highest priority will win, if you like. So we've got a bit of EQ going on here, as if we've just been kicked by the pig. So that's being pushed on. And if we go back, we can see that it comes on after 0.5 of a second, because I've got a particular sound I want to hear first before it starts being affected by this EQ. Then it fades in over 0.3, it holds for 3, and then it fades out over 5 seconds. So I don't need to pop this one off, it does it itself. So let's just have a listen. So we're up to the pigs, we try and steal one. And we get a kick for our troubles. So let's just take a look at that sound here. This is the pig sound cue. So I wanted to hear that squeal, and then the sound mix kind of comes on around about the same time as this tinnitus starts. So we've got the squeal first, and then we've got the kick and that tinnitus sound. So we've got a subtle EQ going on there. Let's just hear that again. And then the EQ comes off and everything goes back to normal. So that's the EQ settings, which you can use in a variety of creative ways, or you could even notch out a mix. So if you know that you want particular sounds to kind of poke through the mix, you could use the EQ to sculpt out the sounds, the other sounds that are going on in that particular frequency range. But say we wanted a slightly less subtle effect, and we wanted to actually adjust the volume as well. So we'll pull that right down just to sort of so we can hear it. Let's try that again. Okay, so you might be able to instantly recognize what's happened there. The tinnitus sound is getting quieter along with all the other sound effects. It's just something that you should be aware of that can catch you out. So pushing this sound mix modifier tinnitus is affecting everything within the sound effects class, but you might remember, or you might go back at this point and look at your hierarchy and realize, well, the sound effects class and all of its children is being affected. But here's the catch. The PIG EQ sound class that actually this sound cue belongs to is within that hierarchy. So this is a child ultimately of this sound effects. So we're applying that sound mix, but at the same time it's actually affecting the sound we want to listen to. So what you might do is set up what we might call an exception group, just to allow for those occasions where you want generally all of the sound effects to be affected, but there's a specific set of sounds you want to exclude that. And so now when we attempt to steal the pig, we can have that. Let's go back and reapply that volume. We can have it applied to all of the sound effects and its children, but the pig sound itself will be an exception to that. How you set up your sound classes and the hierarchy of those classes will very much depend on the nature of your project. If your game is all about vehicles, then you might have different classes for different vehicle types, or if it involves lots of different tribes of non-player characters, you might have classes for each tribe, etc. Once you've set up your hierarchy, a great way to speed up your workflow is to assign sound mixes for common groups of sounds to shortcut keys, so you can quickly isolate and audition your audio. In this video, we've seen how planning out a hierarchy for your sound classes can really speed up your workflow by enabling you to quickly isolate different groups of sounds in the mix.